Arguably one of the most iconic items in Destiny is the Hunter's Golden Gun ability. Something so satisfying about the piercing crack and the steady ring as if you've gone into a trance. When you hear this sound in game, it's a cue that you're now being hunted, stalked by someone who only needs one clean shot to stop you dead in your tracks. If we're going to recreate a sound like this, we need to put ourselves into the shoes of a sound designer for a game like this, and ask, what is this sound supposed to convey? Well, it's supposed to be loud, punching, intimidating. Almost like your character saying, this has been fun, but it's time to stop now, as they ignite their weapon and blast anything in their way. Let's take another look at this sound, so that way we can break it down a bit further. So we can separate most of the sound into three parts. The first part we'll call the vacuum, the second one, the crack, and finally, after the gunshots, we'll call the extinguish. The gunshots themselves are nothing too special, although they do have a sort of weight and flair that is unique to the weapon. The vacuum is almost like the character collecting themselves, while simultaneously sucking out all of the sounds around them before the crack. It's meant to be a moment of focus before you strike. The crack is where the ignition happens, and it's the cue to everyone else that you aren't messing around anymore. Its main feature is that explosive punch as soon as you draw the weapon. Finally, the extinguish is where it comes to a head. The burning weapon out of juice and returned to the air, with a quick yet powerful whooshing sound. With all of these elements deciphered, let's get to recreating the sounds. To make the vacuum sound, I found a heater vent that provided me with just enough airy noise to get me on track. First, I wanted to remove some of the low rumble, so I used an EQ to do most of that. Then I wanted to pitch shift it up gradually in order to simulate like a rise in tension. Then I went on to increase the speed, and finally I doubled the track and added some delay and other effects to widen the sound. It now sounds like this. Following that up, we had to create the crack. And the crack was by far the most difficult part, because when you make your own sounds, things like explosions, or the crack of a whip, or a gunshot are hard to fake. You need that loud punch that those things provide. So, I had to get a sample of a high-caliber pistol. I needed something that I could mold with effects in order to give me that satisfying sound. On the layer for the gunshot, I ended up shifting the pitch in reverse to the vacuum to make it seem less like a shot and more like that dramatic release of tension that we hear in the original. I then added some reverb to give the sound some space, and recorded some cellophane packing to enhance the burning visuals on the screen. The end product sounds a bit like this. Finally, we had the extinguish. For this, it was fairly straightforward. I'd have to record some more of the cellophane to give a sense of continuity, and then I had to find a sound that would suffice for the rapid snuffing of the gun's flames. For this, I used a combination of sounds using my own voice, with various effects on them, combined with a couple of sounds of notebooks being closed. I ended up with a pretty nice layer, even though I didn't use many effects. However, I still felt as though some reverb was needed once everything had been compiled. The final thing we have to do is compile them all together, make a few last minute tweaks to really mesh the sounds together, and we have the final product. All in all, I believe this project shows two things. The absolute level of detail that goes into just one element of a facet of a game is mind-blowing. Imagining doing this process for each and everything in the game makes me appreciate how great it really is. And secondly, the sounds that I did record by myself, I either did on my phone or a relatively cheap microphone when compared to high-end people. It's not necessarily the great equipment or fancy software that makes a great sound design. Though those things help, they pale in comparison to creativity and imagination. Those two things are what make a truly great sound design.